So neurodiversity refers to the concept that differences in brain function and behavioral traits are normal variations in the human population. And some examples we have like autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, and others. The people who are neurodiverse may experience and interact with the world differently than neurotypical individuals. So why I got interested in neurodiversity is because I had uh, dysnomia. So I had difficulties remembering or recalling words sometimes. My verbal abilities were not that good, still not that good. So then I realized that, okay, I also belong to this, spectrum of neurodiverse people. And there is very less awareness on how, like how to treat them or what kind of accommodations they require. All right. So a little bit more on neurodiversity. So neurodiversity is the idea that neurological differences occur amongst every employee, regardless of level in the organization, and that is to be respected and acknowledged rather than pathologized or stigmatized. Neurodiversity normalizes that each individual requires different support to enable success. Neurodiversity recognizes that there is no single right way of thinking or being, and neurodiversity respects that each individual is an expert in how they operate. So this is a little bit about neurodiversity. Now let's discuss like how neurodiverse people are more prone to be, you know, stressed. So the first one is sensory sensitivity. So many neurodiverse individuals have heightened or reduced sensitivity to sensory inputs, like they might not like loud sounds, light, too much of lighting, or maybe someone touching them, which can make everyday environments particularly stressful or overwhelming. Social interaction challenges, difficulties in understanding social cues, they have difficulties reading between the lines, and also norms can lead to social isolation or anxiety, increasing stress levels. Executive function challenges, difficulties with organization, prioritization, and time management can lead to frequent stressful situations, especially in traditional work or school settings. Some neurodiverse individuals may have a preference for routines and predictability, and unexpected changes can lead to stress and anxiety. And misunderstanding is very common. Like lack of awareness and understanding by others can lead to misinterpretation of behaviors, inappropriate expectations, and conflict. I think the last one happens most of the time with neurodiverse people because there's not much awareness, and teachers usually do not know, uh, how to tackle or handle certain situations related to neurodiverse population. Okay, so now we know that neurodiverse people are more prone to stress compared to. I mean, other people also get stressed. We all get stressed all the time, but the way the neurodiverse people feel the stress is a bit different than the common people. And these are some of the examples. There are some coping strategies which I will just briefly go through, and then eventually I will discuss the breath work. So we can do environmental adjustments like reduce sensory overload, use of noise cancelling headphones, dimmed lighting, or quiet spaces can help manage sensory sensitivities. So we can incorporate some of these in our workplaces. Structured environment, creating predictable routines and clear expectations can reduce stress caused by uncertainty. This is something the teachers can focus on. And social and communication strategies, social skills training programs that help in understanding and navigating social situations can reduce anxiety and stress in interpersonal interactions. I think it's very important, like training the neurodiverse people population to handle social interactions. Using direct and unambiguous language can help in reducing misunderstanding and stress. And even in job postings, the job postings should be unambiguous. It shouldn't have vague words, which some neurodiverse people might find it difficult to understand. What does it mean? And that can also increase their stress levels. And then behavioral and emotional support. So one of the techniques that's commonly used is the cognitive behavioral therapy. Uh, it can be adapted for neurodiverse individuals to help manage anxiety, improve emotional regulation, and develop coping mechanisms for dealing with stress. And then we have this mindfulness and relaxation techniques like practicing of meditation, deep breathing, or we can do yoga. It can also help manage stress and improve overall emotional regulation. Educational and workplace accommodations. Individualized learning plans, tailoring education plans to fit individual needs can help reduce academic stress, but we don't see it often. Workplace accommodations, flexible work hours. I think thanks to COVID, we have it right now. Like we can work from home, but before COVID, there was no provision for that. Work from home options uh, and tailored job responsibilities can help in creating a less stressful work environment. I think we are seeing all this in Western countries and also maybe in India, but still, it's still not that much. Like we have to work on it more. And then we can also have support groups, like connecting with others who share similar experiences. I did not know anything about neurodiversity like few years back, and when I struggle on my on my part, then I maybe searched and then I realized that okay, there is a term called neurodiversity, and I had autistic friends uh, who also used to advocate for neurodiversity. But I think these kind of groups, like support groups, can be very helpful. So that people can share their issues. Mentorship programs, like having a mentor who understands neurodiversity, can provide guidance and support in both personal and professional context. And then we can have technology aids like assistive technologies, like we can have speech to text software, and then different kind of organizational apps or reminder systems, which can also help compensate for challenges with executive functions. Okay, so what we know so far is that neurodiverse people are prone to stress like all other people, but the way they get stressed is a bit different than the normal people. And these are some of the ways that they can get stressed, like sensory sensitivities. They have higher sensory sensitivities and all that. And then we have discussed some of the coping strategies that the workplace can adopt to mitigate the adverse effect of stress, which can also lead to anxiety and then lead to depression and so on. And then we discuss all these therapies and the support groups, technological aids. Now, I will be focusing on the breath work because I did research on that. Before that, let's like define what is stress. So stress represents physiological responses in presence of stressor causing an upset in the homeostasis. So this is more like a biological definition. So these stressors can be injury, it can be emotional, it can be career pressure, it can be environmental, it can also be illness. All this applies to neurotypical as well as neurodiverse population. But as I discussed before, the neurodiverse people, the kind of stressors that neurodiverse people face are different than the neurotypical ones. So what happens when we're stressed? So it can lead to fatigue, metabolic disorders, sleeping difficulties, depression. I when I'm anxious or stressed, I cannot sleep, or sometimes I sleep a lot. So these kind of things happen. So this happens because, of course, you have a lot of cortisol in your blood and all those hormones. Uh, I will skip some of these slides. So what happens? We have this hypothalamus pituitarian adrenaline axis. So it releases all these adrenaline as well as cortisol. So we need to know a little bit about autonomic nervous system because breath work directly targets autonomic nervous system. So we have the parasympathetic and sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. So sympathetic is for the fight and flight. So we do need stress response, because that's evolutionarily, it's kind of evolutionary adaptation that we have. But if it goes like out of control, then it causes a lot of trouble. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have this vagus nerve, and it is very popular nowadays. It's called vagus stimulation. So they stimulate this nerve somehow, which actually slows you down, and like it uh, it helps you, like the parasympathetic nervous system gets activated and you are relaxing. So we will not stimulate this with external stimuli, but we will discuss how breath work can actually stimulate this vagus pathway. And then we have this, of course, um, parasympathetic nerves. Okay, just an example, like your heartbeat goes up when you're stressed, and then it can go down when you are, when your parasympathetic nervous system is active. And we have all these neurotransmitters that gets released. When there is more acetylcholine, then you have a slower heart rate, and less, when we have more noradrenaline, we have a faster heart rate. So this is the sympathetic branch, and this is the parasympathetic one. So even for a neurodiverse person, maybe his sympathetic branch is more active than the common neurotypical people. So we can target these branch somehow. It can be through medication, it can be through CVT, or other coping mechanisms. But one of the most powerful one is the breathing, breath work. Okay, I will skip this stuff. So how to reduce stress? Okay, so this one is very popular, the this breathing technique. So what you do here, you uh, inhale for 4 counts, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you hold for 7 counts, and then you exhale for 8 counts. And I'm assuming there has been a lot of research on this kind of breathing methods, and it has been found that it reduces stress levels, both subjective stress and also, uh, of course, your it reduces cortisol and all that. There are some breathing techniques here. I will not go into them. Like this is just one of them, 4, 7, 8, and then we have um, box breathing and then resonance breathing, where I actually have written a thesis on it. The resonance breathing. I will show you what little bit about that, and then we will do maybe a 5 or 10 minutes of breathing, all of us. Okay, so actually, this is something very interesting I found. I was doing a online course on neurodiversity. This is not from that one, sorry, but this is very informative. So even if we ask people to do breath work, the neurodiverse people might need some more accommodation. Uh, so So creating explicitly welcoming and accessible breathwork environments for neurodivergent participants yields benefit that extends far beyond that population. So even if we ask the neurodiverse people to, adopt or practice this kind of methods, we have to provide an environment that suits them. For example, SOIS fact fosters safety. So we can provide them options like they can lie down, sit with support, they can have eye contact, uh, and participation levels puts people in control of their own experience. Yes, so we can allow them to be at ease, and then we also have to start gently. Like this breathing exercises are not very common, and we are not yogis, so we don't know much. So intense breathing techniques can be overwhelming sometimes with dysregulated vagus nerve states. So So we have to start, slowly. The instruction has to be very clear. Uh, like, the explanation has to be very clear. It should not be ambiguous. Yeah, they might have ADHD, or they might get distracted. So we have to take those things into consideration. Yeah, and if we introduce this kind of techniques like breath work or breathing exercises, and if they say no, then we have to accept it, that they don't need to do it. Uh, yeah, we should not be assuming that they will be expert in breath work or other kind of meditative practices. So we have to take this into consideration. Okay. So I will discuss a little bit about slow breathing, into the science of slow breathing, what happens. There are tons of research that were done on this, like deep abdominal breathing encourages full oxygen exchange in your blood. It can also slow the heartbeat and lower or stabilize blood pressure. Uh, yeah, these are from published studies. And of course, it helps reduce the stress level. I personally do breathing exercises. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. But the resonance breathing, this is more the Western version, which is very new to me, but it actually increases your heart rate variability. Uh, okay, I will skip some of the technical stuff. So what happens when we breathe slowly? Our cardiac rhythm, that is the heart rhythm, it actually synchronizes with our respiration, and that somehow triggers your parasympathetic nervous system. The neuroscience is not that much clear, but still there are a lot of evidences. Uh, okay, so we can do one thing. Okay, let me first finish the presentation, and then we will do the breathing exercise together. Um, okay, I will skip some of the slides. So okay, this is very interesting because it is called heart rate variability. So our heart does not beat like a clock. It's not like a metronome. So you can see there is a difference in timing interval between the heartbeats. And this is a natural variation. Like neurodiversity, we also have a variation in our heartbeat. And this is good. This is good for our health. So we are more adaptive to the changing environment. Now what happens when we are stressed? This gets disrupted, this variation goes away. So that is very bad for our health. But when we breathe slowly, what happens? This variation increases. So what we call it heart rate variability. So when we breathe slowly, uh, when we perform the breath work, our heart rate variability goes up, and this is how we achieve the parasympathetic dominance. Like parasympathetic nervous system gets active and it slows you down. And I personally tried it, like I'm a nervous flyer. When I fly, when the flight takes off, my heart rate goes up, and I actually tried this and I counted my pulse, and I found that breath work do decrease your heartbeat to a great extent. I will skip these measures. I will just show you some. So what happens, like slow breathing actually activates both central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And there's something called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. I will skip the explanations. Uh, and oscillations of a healthy heart are complex and non-linear. Again, it's so interesting. Like nature also made our heart, like there's variability in our heartbeat too, like like the neurodiversity. So I think this diversity is actually a very natural phenomena that we see with people, that we see with our own physiological signals, which is really fascinating. Yeah, and with age, like all this complexity gets reduced, and also when we're stressed. And I think it can be a future research idea. Like, what about the neurodiverse people? Do they have a different, state of physiological arousal? Like, uh, do their hearts or do their nervous system works differently? Of course, it does work differently, but I think there's more, scope for future work. Uh, yeah, I will skip it. Like I already mentioned, we have this vagus nerve, which we have to focus on. We have to somehow stimulate this one so that the activity of the sympathetic nerve reduces. So what we do usually do, we collect data using pulse plethysmography. This is the heart, and then from here we get the heartbeats. Um, and this is like this is typical respiratory signal. When you're breathing slowly, you can see here you are breathing slowly, uh, and then here you're breathing fast. There are a lot of papers here. Let me see if I have my own studies. Uh, I didn't include all my results here, but I can just show you. Uh, so what happens when you are breathing slowly? Okay, let me just show this one. So you can see here, when you are breathing slowly, your you can see there are frequencies at this particular, there are peaks at this particular frequency. So we were breathing at this frequency, and I will show you how to breathe at this frequency. And this is your heartbeats. So your heartbeats kind of synchronize with your respiratory signal. And then this is actually a Fourier transform of the signal. So we're looking at the frequency space. You can see there are a lot of peaks at this frequency. But if when we're breathing fast, we can see it's scattered everywhere. And uh, I did not include it, but um, so in my thesis, I found like when you are stressed, your you have peaks scattered everywhere. So we can also visualize it in this way. So you can see that when you're breathing at this frequency, there's a very huge activity here. So we have discussed, like there are different coping strategies like cognitive behavioral therapy, uh, and then we have also music therapy, and then we have deep breathing. So I will quickly show you my own research work. I forgot to include it here. Just bear with me. So in my work, I actually compared music versus the breathing exercise, like which one uh, is more effective in reducing stress. So what I found, I will just quickly jump to the results and I will show you quickly. Um, so it's a very technical thesis, but still, so what we found, this is respiration rate. So this heart rate variability, you can see the heart rate variability goes up uh, in the breathing group compared to the music group. So music do help in increasing your heart rate variability, but we found that it's more when you are using these breathing interventions. And similarly, uh, these are the frequency domain stuff that I mentioned. So so people are watching actually a stressful movie, and we can see it's like these peaks are scattered everywhere. But when you are breathing slowly, uh, we can see peaks here. I will not go deep into the mathematics of what these peaks are, but it can be clear here. So we have plenty of measures that actually points towards the same conclusion that breathing exercises do increase your heart rate variability and does reduce stress. So this is very interesting. So what happens when you are breathing slowly? Your heart rate and your respiration actually get synchronized. But you can see when you are watching a stressful movie, or even a neurodiverse person when he is encountering stress, you can see that it's not at all synchronized. But here it's quite synchronized, and we can also see it like here. Anyway, these are more technical details, so I'm just showing you that breathing exercises do help in reducing stress. And there are tons of papers. This is my thesis, but there are tons of papers which actually points towards the same direction. uh, just give me 1 second, I need to put my laptop in charging. Okay, all right, let's go to the eh, last. Okay, so far we have discussed that breathing techniques can be effective in reducing stress. So why don't we try, all of us try some breathing, you know, together. So this is my startup, so I'm starting it. It's very new, so then I just gave the name NG Breath, so it reduces stress. So I'm the person mostly here. We also have an Android app, so if you guys want, I will give you the link later on. And then we also have collaborations with like researchers. We have published some papers too, not exactly on breathing, but it's related. Like we worked on HRV features and also on breathing exercises. uh, so let me share the app with you guys in the chat, and we will all do the exercise together. So there's a form I want you to fill in, so that I will also know like who are the people who tried it. So there is a short form. Just fill it up quick. You can just not take much time. And then there is a start breathing exercise button. So I will just give you a few seconds to just fill it up. You just need to fill it up once. If you have done it before, you don't need to do it again. And I created this wallpaper using the AI, so which is very interesting. Anyway, so this is an online app right now, but we also have an Android app, and uh, I'm planning to build an iPhone app. And yesterday, actually, I found a device like that also helps you in guided breathing. But anyway, so let's. I will just show you first how it works, and then we will do the breathing for 5 minutes, and then uh, I'm open to questions. So here you can see in this screen. So right now I only have three different kind of breathing techniques, like balancing, calming, energizing. I don't have the one that I just showed you, like this 478 breathing, but I have these ones. And I also plan to include some more traditional sounds, like some healing sounds from um, you know ancient Indian practice or maybe Buddhist practices. But anyway, so uh, for example, this calming breathing pattern, we have an inhale ratio of 4 seconds, and then we have hold ratio of 0 seconds, exhale of 6 seconds, and we can use a music. And then if we click on start breathing, it let so let's do it for 3 minutes. I will put a timer. uh, let's put a timer. Usually you can practice it for 10 minutes or maybe for 20 minutes too. Let's do it for 3 minutes. All right, so let us all breathe. So mind calm. Okay, so 3 minutes are up, and then so you this is free, so you can just use it at your leisure time. And let's see, we have anything else here. Uh, So I will just recap. So we discussed what neurodiversity is, and then we discussed why neurodiverse people are more prone to stress, and then we discussed some of the strategies that the neurodiverse people as well as the workplace can adopt to minimize the stressful responses. And then one of the techniques that I have just explained to you is breath work that we all can practice, and as well as the neurodiverse people, and there is tons of science behind it how it works. And there are studies that have also found that breath work can also be related to longevity. And yeah, and there are other resources too if you want to explore, like there are a lot of breathing videos. You can choose your breathing rate, but you can also use my app where you can choose the breathing styles. And I think that's all what I have. So I will stop sharing, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debanjan. That's a most interesting presentation. I'm going to open up to questions if anybody in the audience would like to put their hand up. But perhaps I can kick us off with one. When you've used this technique, do you tend to use it with individuals, or have you used it in group sessions as well?
That's a very good question. Actually, in my thesis, it was done in a group because my lab used to study group dynamics. but it can also be used in individual settings. But I think if you do it in a group, you're more synchronized. And there are a lot of studies on how this synchrony leads to pro-sociality and all that. So I think if you do it in a group, it will reduce the stress more, but you can do it in individual settings too.
So when you've done it in groups, do you have to be careful about the selection of the people who are in the group? I mean, neurodiversity, for instance, covers a vast range. Not obviously in group situations, people influence each other. So, is there an issue around selection of groups?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have to do some pre-screening, because in my study it was neurotypical ones. I have not done any studies on neurodiverse, but that's the future plan. Of course, I want to study them. But I think you raise a very good point. Like ADHD person or maybe a autistic person might have different you know uh, thing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but I think we have to do some pre-screening and then decide like what is the best approach.
Okay, can we have some questions from other participants today then, please? If you could just raise your hand if you have a question. Yes, okay. Arnav, would you like to come in with your question, please?
Hi. My question is how to start these breathing exercises with ASD kids.
Sorry, ASD.
ASD child, neurodiverse child.
Yeah. um, I think we can start normally, like as I mentioned, we have to be careful that we are not overwhelming them. So we can go with some of the softer breathing techniques, like that does not stress you much, because there are tons of breathing techniques that we can adopt. This slow breathing can be helpful. uh, yeah, I do not have any specific answer to that, like which one would be appropriate, but I think any a Google search might help us because there are studies on it. uh, but we can start with something that does not overwhelm the person, because it requires a little bit of practice. I've been doing it for 10 years, so maybe I'm much more I don't get overwhelmed at all. But for a newcomer who have not tried it, it might be a little bit stressful to them at the beginning. But over time I found that it actually it just you just get into the flow, so it actually you don't feel anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir. But for the children, it's a difficult task for them to understand the breathing concept. Na?
So
So
that's why
how
we
to
have these
start with them?
cues. So you can they can follow the cues, the breathing sounds, or there can be some visual guides. Like as I have shown you, the circle grows bigger and smaller. They can just try to follow the circle, or we can also design some sounds that are not overwhelming to the neurodiverse people, right? So we can, but that might require more expertise. I don't know, but yeah, they can follow those animations, or they can follow the sound, or we can also guide them like breathe for 1 2 3 4, hold, and like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
with visual and auditory clues. Okay,
Right.
thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh, Kanika, we have a question from Kanika, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Debanjan, for the wonderful session. So, I had a question for you. So, when you talk about neurotypical people, and I was just going through your the website that you shared,
Mhm.
Anxi breathing. So, in that, are you also incorporating the features or the principles that yoga talks about? So, the breathing, is it like scientifically designed?
Yeah, like all these breathing techniques have already been well established. There are papers on it, but I'm not including the typical pranayama stuff here. Like you have alternate nostril breathing, and then you have like different fast breathing techniques like vastrika, or you have this kapalbhati and all that. So that's, I'm not including all of them, but including the more western versions here, like this box breathing, or 478 breathing, which is used by first responders. which is used by even in military people. So there are tons of evidences that these ones reduced stress drastically. And yeah, but I have not included those typical yoga techniques, but these are more like Western ones, Western version of that. And there are publications too for all of them.
Right.
Not mine,
And
but of
also,
people have done it. Yeah.
okay. And one more thing, like the sample you talked about neurotypical people. So, did you also include people in uh, neurotypical population who had anxiety and other depressive issues, where, like, in your the study that you shared,
Yeah.
you also studied the responses to stressful movies and all this. So, were their responses way different from other people who had no issues with stress or anxiety?
Actually, we did not do any pre-screening for that. It was the cohort was university undergrads. But what you
Okay.
were saying is can be a future study where we can actually compare neurotypical versus neurodiverse population and how they react to breathing exercises. Is it effective to both of them? But there, I did read studies where they found that for neurodiverse people, this breath work can be really handy. And yeah, there are different publications, but I have not tasted it on by myself. But that's something I'm looking forward to.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Kanika. Any other questions, please?
Sir, there is a question in the chat box, sir.
Ah, right. Okay. Right. So we've a question from Indrani, which says, are there any specific breathwork techniques that you recommend for neurodiverse individuals and why? I think perhaps you've already addressed that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but let me just say like um, if 4-7-8 has been used, this 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale, and this works with like both neurotypical and neurodiverse. But if there is any specific ones right now, I do not know. But I would just Google once and see, in the internet, because it has been explored before, like what kind of techniques are useful. And I'm very much open to including those techniques for in my app, so that it can cater to neurodiverse people too. But I think this should be similar ones, but there might be slight differences in the ratios, like inhale, exhale, and yeah. But I'm very open to including different kind of music that might be more you know uh, useful for neurodiverse people. And I'm very much looking forward to even collaborating with all of you guys. So, like, I'm not an expert in neurodiversity, but yeah.
I'm just wondering. Oh, sorry. Yes, that was just Indrani saying thank you. I'm just wondering if there's anybody out there who has used any similar techniques in their work. Anybody here used any kind of breathing techniques with their clients, their children, or the adults they work with? Yes, Kanika's raised hand has done, and Sinha has as well. Oh, that's Anamika. Anamika, would you like to say something about how you've used this?
Yeah,
sort of
good evening, everyone. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for the wonderful, informative session. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm unable to switch on the camera, but still. I think we had worked with the children with a neurodiverse people population, but music is much more effective for all the levels of uh, neurodiverse population. And then if we start with the music and then we start the breathing techniques, I think that's going to help.
Okay.
That is my experience. I don't know. I just want to know that whether do you start the breathing techniques along with music side by side, or how should we go about it?
So in my app, so we have both the provisions, like we can use the soothing music along with the bell sound, and all those the bell sounds that you heard, it's actually I got it from chakra meditation. So it is said that those bell sounds actually relates to some of the chakras that we have. But that's again, that's bit philosophical, and there are no, I don't know if there is any scientific studies, but I use those sounds. But what Anamika said is very interesting, and maybe, I don't know, I'm very much open to collaborating with all of you, to do some more studies on it and see like how can we actually build an effective method that can help neurodiverse people. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. And I see Kanika's raised her hand again, wants to say something. Kanika, do you want to say something? No?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So actually, for the last 1 year, I've been working with a child who's blind, has a speech impairment, and along with that, he has intellectual disability as well. So he has a lot of sensory issues, and to tackle those sensory issues, I've been working on Om chanting, because there were many things that we tried to do to wean off his sensory needs, that he used to actually continuously give pressure on his neck, which had created really deep marks and had turned painful. So just to wean it off, we have not been successful. Like, around the weaning off has been successful to the ratio of, I can say, to the percentage of 50 to 60%. So it has reduced. So basically we started doing in this way, that I used to play the Om chanting sound for him, and then play it for a minute and then stop it. And I did not let his hand go to his neck for that time duration, and gradually we increase that uh, timing. So in my observation, it definitely led to reduction in the time that he was using for all his sensory input, especially on his neck area. And we gradually made it a little bit of clapping sound when he used to do Om chanting. So and with there, obviously it was difficult to monitor breathing with him because he could not see. So it was more about placing his hand on his chest and then gradually breathing in and breathing out. So definitely that has worked wonders with him. And I feel if obviously the way Debanjan has uh, propagated the way of doing it in a more scientific way, then I think the results will be better.
Thank you, Kanika. That's a useful observation. We have a question raised by Tamil Selvan in the chat box, and Tamil says that you yourself have mentioned that you have some sort of neurodiversity like dysnomia, and you've been practicing breathing techniques for 10 years. What is your experience of the effects of these techniques on your own self? And can you elaborate on that?
That's a very good question. But I did not know that I had dysnomia 10 years back. But I've been doing this practice for like, I'm from India, and I was seeing this yogis and all that. But dysnomia is like I had difficulties recalling words, and my verbal abilities were not that good. It's getting reduced like over time, but for the breathing techniques do reduce your stress level. This is what I found. And you feel good, you feel relaxed, and all those negative thoughts, you can let them disappear. um, but it's difficult to say from, like, I would say it is working with me, and I've been doing it for like so many years, and it do not have any adverse effect. And the science also backs that, because the only weapon that we have to modulate our nervous system is the breathing. Of course, the thoughts can be helpful. This is what we do in the mindfulness. Like, we concentrate on something, and then the mind wandering stops. So breathing is one of the powerful ways we can allow the parasympathetic nervous system to dominate. So it's actually working for me, that I can say, but not exactly with dysnomia. I don't know. But that's something I would definitely think about and explore more. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, neuroplasticity. I think there's a question on neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
I do believe definitely it will increase more connections in your brain. I do have a neuroscience degree. I studied neuroscience at the University of Rhode Island, but I do neuroimaging stuff, and I'm very much curious to study like electroencephalography and also fMRI. I think there are studies where people have done fMRIs on alcoholic people, and they found that the craving for alcohol goes down when you practice this kind of breathing techniques. And it was done in Rutgers University in US. Definitely, it increases your neuroplasticity, and I believe. I mean, there should be a lot of studies on it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we've come just about to the end of our time. Now, we have had a request that if any of you are interested in sharing your experiences, they would be welcome. And I'm sure that Rajesh, as usual, will post up details of today's seminar with contact details as well, so you can make contact if you want to discuss this any further. But it remains for me just to say thank you very much to today's speaker for the most illuminating discussion and presentation of your work. Wish you every success as that continues. And I'm just going to hand over to Dr. Rajesh to conclude today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard sir, for chairing the session, and thank you, Debanjan ji, for, as Richard sir said, illuminating and a very different topic altogether. I would be definitely contacting you for a joint collaborative research with our institute, and then definitely we'll work it on that. I'm actually extremely thankful to Krishna for letting me know about you, and also thank you that you have accepted our invitation to speak for our esteemed members. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And Krishna is from my state, so that's how we know each other. He's also
And
from our
the
state.
member secretary of IIRN, Dr. Himanshu Das, is from your state only.
Okay. Okay.
He's
Yeah,
from
nice.
Pathshala.
Okay.
So he's there joined, but he's not keeping well, so that's why he's unable to speak. So, and thank you also that you have joined the group, IIRN WhatsApp group, and many people will be in touch with you. And in future also, our association, our network will be in touch with you.
Thank you so much into collaborating with all of you. I think I also have to learn a lot about neurodiversity, and I have some other expertise and you have some other expertise, and maybe we can have some good collaborations in future.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Richard sir, for chairing the session. And thank you everybody, Farida ma'am, Tamil Selvan sir, Anamika madam, everybody for joining this session. Thank you all. Again, we'll meet on 26th of July, same time, 7 to 8. Till then, keep safe. Good night. Keep smiling.